Yes. So Azure Data Factory, I'll explain again, like at a high level. Then we'll create a sample resource in the portal. Then what we'll do is I'll explain the components of Azure Data Factory, and we'll create a simple pipeline and we'll run it. Okay. And apart from that, what we'll do is from next week Monday, I will start with Monday we'll have some more samples which involves the ADLS, blob, and as well as Azure Data Factory. Then Tuesday, Wednesday we will have Azure SQL. Tuesday only, one day is enough. Azure SQL, whatever is required for this one. Then next 3-4 days we'll continue with the same examples in the ADF. So we will go from simple to complex scenarios, covering even the real-time scenarios. So we'll on and off, we'll go on using this ADF, because when I use that Databricks, then there also, like I will show like some code in the notebooks running. Again, I will try to call them in the data factory. And when I go with the event hub, there also event hub, I will create some events and I will try to show you how to use them in the this one. Even this stream analytics also I'll use that. So on and off, we'll be using this data factory at regular intervals. So I was saying, so ingest, store, preparation, train, in this entire structure. So data factory highly used in the ingest mechanism. Okay, ingest phase, I was saying. So it's so powerful that it connects almost like 80 plus sources, and irrespective of on-premise or Azure or web, anything, right? So it can access any number of n number of resources, n number of different resource types, and it has good computation power. So that is the reason it becoming a highly powerful tool. And here I was saying, so data sources, ingest, preparation, train. So ingest is the one which does all these operations. And yesterday we also spoke about what is data set, activity, pipeline, linked service, right? So activity is a grander level of transformation. So when you get the data, transform the data, load the data, the grander level will be activity, right? So some activities combines and makes it as a pipeline, right? And to connect to the data, to transfer the data, to ingest the data, we need some objects, right? So those are the two important things which you need to remember: the data set and linked service. So linked service is the one which connects to the actual source of the data. Okay, so it can be a source or a sink. Sink is nothing but a target, because in the data factory we call the target as a sink, right? So here the linked service is there, here the data set is there. So say suppose in a Azure blob storage, I want to access a file known as XYZ or sample. Okay, then the linked service will have the connection details for that particular storage account, saying that the storage account name, then the container name, then the path of the file it will have. Whereas linked service will have linked service, whereas the data set will have the specific file name called sample, right? And when I talk about the Oracle, suppose, okay, in Oracle the linked service will be the server name, the username, and the password, and the database name. Okay, these are all things will be tied up and will be stored as a linked service. And say suppose employee table I want to access, that employee table will be my data set, right? So this is like a linked service, I can say connection string, I can say. Basically a connection string describes everything, right? The server name, username, password, everything, database, everything. Whereas data set talks about the particular data for which you want to access, which you want to transfer, which you want to ingest, which you want to store. It can be anything, it can be source or it can be target, right? So that's about the basic things about the data set. Now let us create a simple this one ADF's resource, and I will show you how to do that. me share the link. Let me open the portal. Yeah, here is the portal. So what I will do is I'll create a, data factory. So here the data factory resources. So data factories is the one which is resource type here over here. So I'll create a data factory and subscription. Okay, that's fine. So I'll create a data factory resource. No resource group. Do you have anything extra? Yes. So let me create a specific one. So if you have existing one, you can use that. Otherwise, you can create a new one. Now I want to couple everything in this. So what happens is that when I want to say, suppose I created like n number of resources, like data factory or a storage or account, anything, I will store everything over in the Azure DE POCs. So at the end of the day, instead of going to each and every resource, I'll simply create whatever is available in this resource group. So it's easy for me to manage the things, right? Now here I'll use is to yes. So name I'll use so version is the v2. So this is a universally it will be distinct. So I'll say okay. Fine. So git configuration. So you can remove, you can ignore that. Git in the sense, you know that, right? Where you'll manage the code repositories and all. So ignore for that now. Networking. So enable manage that we can see. Connecting public endpoint, I will see, so that everybody can connect that. Enable encryption is but so by default what happens, data is encrypted with the Microsoft major keys, as I was saying. Still, you, if you want to use customer major key, you can use that. I'll leave it as it is. Now let me see here.
In real time, do we use the existing resource group, or will be
because when you start the project itself, you will design the resource groups. So based on the structure, say suppose for testing one resource group, for test environment, one dev environment one resource group, one production environment one resource group, then you will use everything in that particular resource group.
Look, I mean, we will create, Azure Data Engineer will create our separate.
Okay, that you are saying. Okay, yeah. Sometimes we will create, developers will create. No, developers only will create.
Oh.
So now it will be deployed. Now it is time. So here, so this is the data factory resource. So same way it will have everything like activity log. Activity log, in this activity log is the common which talks about all the activities performed on that. Okay. So access control, the same thing. If you want to give access to any particular user, that you can do. And networking, same. Like you can create like only those particular IPs can access this. And one more thing which is very important in the data factory is alerts and metrics, okay, with which you can monitor the system. Alert in the sense you can create alert saying that, say suppose one particular package, one particular job trigger is failed or pipeline is failed, then you can alert, you can add some mail IDs, okay, so that those mail IDs are phone numbers, so those will people get a notification whenever the job fails. In the job, we call it a trigger, okay. So trigger is a scheduled mechanism of the pipeline which runs at a given intervals, okay. That is a trigger also is one of the thing. It's kind of a SSIS job, I can say. Okay. Now let me go to that this one. So open Azure Data Factory Studio. Here you can click on this. When you click on this, so what happens? adf.azure.com gets open, okay. So either you can click on this open Azure Data Factory Studio, otherwise you can directly use the link adf.azure.com. So it is separately, it has its own URL, okay. You can do both the things. All right. Now here this is a basic window. So here it has some samples. So how to configure SSIS, transform the data. So it has some samples over here. And this pipeline template, these are all the templates. We'll talk about it. And these are the some tutorials, videos you can go through over here. Okay, here I don't have any code repository. It's giving some instructions. I don't want to do that. Now this is home, right, in which we are now. Now author. So it has three things very important. One is the author, one is the monitor, one is the manage. So author, as the name itself specifies, author is the one where we create the pipelines, data sets, and configuring the data, creating the triggers, everything you are going to author over here. Okay, so author is the one with important window where you will create all the related ADF packages, that is pipelines and activities, right? Now next one is monitor. Monitor in the sense when you create when you create the pipelines, you need to monitor that, right? So whatever the pipelines there, those which are running, okay, you can monitor over here, like execution. So in what phase is executing, what is the status, whether it's pass, fail. So the series of things will be there, right? So those are all you can see over here, okay. And trigger runs. So say suppose for the pipelines you have some triggers, okay. Triggers in the sense, as I was saying, triggers are nothing but that scheduled jobs, scheduled pipelines. So you can see triggers execution, same like in SSIS log, you'll see all the logs, right? You can see over here, okay. There are trigger types we have, we'll talk about it, saying that scheduled trigger, tumbling window, storage event, custom event, these four types of the windows, but usually we'll use scheduled, tumbling, and storage events. Some are the important triggers which we have. So we'll see, and based on the scheduled type also, trigger type also, you can see the execution status over here.
So what is tumbling windows means?
We will talk about it. So this is also like a
Okay.
schedule, but based on some activity it runs. And storage event in the sense, say suppose when a file is stored in the storage event, I want to execute this ADF pipeline. Then that talks about the storage event. And a custom event we never used, but we'll talk about these three things. And apart from that, we have integration runtime, which is very, very important, which I was talking about. So integration runtime is the one which provides the computation to run the ADF pipeline. Okay, it's kind of a environment, it's a kind of a hardware setup, or it's a kind of an environment which supports the actual execution of ADF pipeline. Okay, so that is the integration runtime. Give me a minute. I think I missed that in the this PPT. fine, that's fine. I will add that and upload it. Okay, so integration runtime is the one which helps to run this ADF pipeline. Okay, so we have three types. One is self-hosted integration runtime. So self-hosted integration runtime is basically for running a package, so running ADF to connect to the on-premise data. So basically, whenever you have some data in the on-premise data, you want to connect that and you want to use that in the pipeline, then you will create a integration runtime. So when you have source or target or in the on-premise, you'll use the self-hosted integration runtime. Azure integration runtime. When your source or targets or sinks are available in the Azure environment, then you will use Azure integration runtime. Okay, and by default, the ADF creates something called auto resolve integration runtime, which you can use by default whenever you are interacting the data which is available in the Azure environment. And Azure SSIS, the name itself says that. So whenever you want to execute SSIS packages in the Azure Data Factory, then you can use the Azure SSIS integration runtime. So these are the three important integration runtimes which we have: self-hosted, Azure, Azure SSIS. So this is important even when you work in the environment, or from exam point of view, or even at the interview point of view, also very important. So self-hosted is kind of which is used to connect to the on-premise systems. Azure is for obviously the Azure integration runtime, and Azure SSIS integration runtime for the SSIS packages. Okay,
So
and
self-hosted, Purushottam, 1 second. Self-hosted means, let's say if I have file on premise, is it to access the on premises?
yes, you're right.
Okay. So if it is Azure means like
Azure environment,
cloud environment.
Azure SQL or in the storage account, Azure storage account, anything.
So self-hosted, in the self-hosted, I can use any FTP file access kind of thing.
Yes, that I can use. Or some, say suppose your SQL server is there in your on-premise environment, SQL server, or you have Oracle in your on-premise environment. Then you want to connect to that, right? On-premise environment in Oracle. Say suppose simple, you want to lift some data which is in the on-premise environment. You want to load the data into the Azure. So what I'll do, I'll create a self-hosted integration runtime, and I will connect to that Oracle. I'll create a related reintegration runtime. I'll connect to that Oracle database. Then I will lift the data. Okay. So I used
Azure SSIS means
Azure SSIS in the sense, say suppose you have some SSIS packages, okay, and you want to run that SSIS packages into that. Then you can connect to that SSIS package environment. You can execute that. Okay, we'll use that. We'll say, so in the real time, I never worked with any SSIS integration runtime, honestly, but we'll try to create an SSIS package and we'll try to run that with the help of this. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
And data flow debug. So here we have like a data flow and all. I will talk about in detail when it comes to data flow. Say suppose a data flow is nothing but a, so we have in SSS data control flow and data flow, right? So data flow is nothing but a series of transformations, right? So in the data flow, when data goes from one place to another place, from one activity to another activity, you can see all the flow from one end to another end in this data flow debug session. Okay, and the final part will be alerts and metrics. So I was showing this metrics, right? Alerts, I was showing this alerts in this portal, right? The same thing you can do here also. So whatever the alert rules, metrics you are available there in the portal, they are available here also. You can navigate this and you can use over here. All right, and the last one will be manage. So where you can kind of create those things. So you can create a linked service, you can create integration runtime, so you can set up this Git configuration. Okay, and triggers also you can create, and say suppose you have some global parameters that you can do. Okay, and you want to encrypt this data with the custom managed key, that you can do. and a credential you can pass. Okay, so everything you can do over here the manage. So usually we'll use for integration runtime linked services, we use this. Okay, so we have home, author, monitor, and manage. So these are the important things. And as I said, by default Azure provides an integration runtime called auto resolve integration runtime, which you can use over here. So we'll try to create even integration runtimes then going forward in the coming classes, then we'll see how does it works. Now here, these are the important parts. One is the pipeline, data set, data flow. Power query we don't use, is a preview, ignore that. And here you can see the set code repository. Say suppose you have Git and you want to set up some code repository, then you can use that, you can create that here. So for now we are using only data factory. Okay, now I want to create the pipeline. The first pipeline, I'll use the pipeline. So when I create the pipeline, the property windows comes and where you can use the name. So the notation will be PL underscore. Okay, so it's widely used and commonly used notation, which you also need to use. PL underscore sample will use. Okay, now I'm done with this. Now in the same way in the SSIS, if you are new to SS, if you are already have experience SS, we have all the transformations and everything, right? Here also the same thing will be there, which is kind of a activities. Okay, activity is nothing but the action which you perform on the data, right? So these are pipelines and all. These are the activities. These are what is it? This area where you'll create all the pipelines, and here you can see parameters, variables, settings, the output. Okay, you can see the output, like the execution output and all you can see over here. And if you want to change anything, so simply you can go over here and you can change over here. Okay, so this pipeline is a sample, just I created that. All right, so I can validate it. So there is nothing now, so you can validate it. Now here everything is segregated into as per the activities, what it does. So move and transform. Okay, in move and transfer, the widely used, mostly we'll use this thing. Copy data is very powerful activity which you need to understand, which is used to copy the data from one location to another location, from one source to another source. And the data flow is nothing but a series of transformations. Say suppose you want to transform the data, you want to apply so many transformations in the data, so it's like a codeless transformation, no code activity. Okay, for that you'll use the data flow. When you click on the data flow, again it will pop up to the explicit window in the data flows. It comes under in this data flow where you can do all kind of transformations. And Azure Data Explorer, we have Azure Functions, batch services. See here, Databricks. Say suppose in the Databricks you have some notebook, you want to call it, then you can use the this notebook one. Data Lake Analytics. Say suppose you have some use skill commands for analytics, you can use that. And HD instead iteration. Iteration says like simple in the programming environment terminology. Filter, for each, if condition, switch, until. These are like iteration. Even as I said, you can you can use this machine learning activities also, where you can call those models. And the power query, the preview model, you can ignore that. So but what we use is the copy data, we'll use the data flow, we'll try to call the notebook, then we will use this for each, if condition also we'll use in our examples. All right, any doubts so far? So in the first one, we'll use the copy data. Okay, so for that, let me see if I have anything in the storage account. I don't have any storage account. So let me create a simple storage account. I'll use the same Azure DE POCs. Storage account name, I'll use source. So there is nothing called source or sink. Oh, sorry. Storage, I'll use this standard. I don't want any GRS. Advanced. Enable public access. I don't want it to be data lake for now. The blob storage is enough for me. All right. So I'll go for the hot. Make sure you have 3 days holidays, right? Make sure you do this whatever I did in the last few days. Okay, otherwise it will be big confusion and you cannot do everything on a single day. So I hope you take some time and perform all these activities. Then only you'll get many doubts and many scenarios.
So, Purushottam,
Mhm.
for ADF, if my account is already expired after 1 month, so that ADF is also having the
Of
same
course,
issue.
right? ADF is a resource within the Azure only. Of course, you cannot access it. So try to create one more account with some credit card. Otherwise, you go for pay as you go. So just use it intelligently. That's what I can say that. So I'll create 2 tags. So I'll say no, I'll use access, I'll use source, target, I'll say. So I have 2 containers. One is the source, one is the target. And what is this? Is a blob. It's not a data lake, right? So I'll upload some file. Let me see if I have some file. Okay, I took a file and upload it. Okay, that is done now. Now I'll go here. Now see here, copy activities, some important properties which you need to understand. One is the general, where you will give the basic properties. Yeah, and description. The timeout, it simply says the timeout, and if it fails, it retry. So for how much time it needs to retry. All right. And source, so which is nothing but talks about the actual source data set. When you want to connect to the source properties and all, 1 second, give me a minute. So here we have like source. Source is a data set. Source is the one where you connect to the source data set which you want to extract. Sync is a kind of a target. As I said, sync is we call target sync. We call target as a sync. So where you want to sync the data. Okay, and if you want to have some mapping, so you can see the mapping from the between the source and sync. Okay. Now here the actual settings which controls this data movement. So one is the data integration unit. Okay, so here the computation power in the data factory is measured in terms of data integration unit, DIU. Okay, this is also very important from the exam point of view or interview point of view, data integration unit. Okay, so I'll say auto. So what happens auto in the sense, it is kind of a auto scale in sense based on the data movement, it increases or decreases data integration units. Okay, but if you want to explicitly mention data integration units, then you can mention that. So I'll use auto. And degree of parallelism, so how many activities you want to, how much parallelism you want that, so that you can do here. And fault tolerance in the sense, when there is an error, how to control that. Say suppose there are some incompatible rows. Okay, say suppose like a primary key violation or data type validation. So what I want to do, I want to skip or I want to fail, so that all you can do. So skip you can do. Okay, so if it is files are there, if you want to do that you can do. So skip in the sense, whenever incompatible rows are there, those will be skipped instead of throwing an error. And logging, so generally it like some logging modes, if you want to enable logging, that you can do over here. Okay, so these are some properties. So user properties, you don't need to worry about that. Now let us talk about the source over here. Now in the source which is there in my blob storage, right? Now what I will do is I'll create a source here. Now I want to before creating the source, so what I need to do, I want to create a data set. Okay, now see here what happens. Okay, so where is that? In the Azure blob storage we have. See here, you can see all the things over here. If I remove that, we have data set from the database, Amazon, Redshift, DB2, even you have Amazon file FTP. Okay, OData, ODBC, NoSQL, so many are there. So here I have Azure, so blob storage I will use. Okay, so I have a CSV file. So here even you can select the what is the file format you're doing. Avro, binary, delimited, ORC, and Parquet and ORC. Some are the very important widely used formats. So now a simple one, I use delimited text CSV. I'll use this. Continue. Okay, so it is a data set. Data set also you need to use the proper notation. Okay, DS source. Now linked service. So I have a data source, but I need a linked service to connect to that, right? So without linked service, I cannot connect to that data set. So what I'll do, new. Now linked service we have. So I'll use notation ls. Okay, I'll use the integration runtime, default integration runtime, auto resolve. And authentication method we have, like we have service principal, managed identity, or account key. So I'll use the by default for now. I use subscription, I have this one. Now account name, it by default it gives you all the available ones. So I'll use this one. Okay, now test connection. Okay, now I am able to connect to this particular storage account. Now create. Now once it is done, now where is the path, where is the container, where is the one which where is the path we have? So what I'll do here, I'll go here, source is the path. Okay, this is the file. So say here, this is a simple one, so I'm showing all the things, otherwise you can make it all this dynamic. All right, Now sample CSV my source from where I am picking up the data, which is my source data. Now okay. Now created the source data set, right? Now when I create a source data set, you can see here file path type, okay, and enable partition, okay, max concurrent connections, everything you can show here. We'll talk this in detail, okay, and even we'll try to do that everything with the help of a variables, that also you can see here. Now sync. Now let us go for the target. Now source can I use? No. So let me see here, new blob storage, same thing, CSV file. Now already have a linked service to connect to that particular one, so I can use the same linked service. Okay. Now the path, I'll use the target. I'll use the target. Okay. Okay. Now the source is set, sync is set, mapping I don't have anything, ignore that. Now everything is done. Now let's validate it. Or did I enable the login? Okay, I don't want to enable the login, because enable login in the sense what happens, it will create log files in the specified location. I want to ignore that. Now validate it. Now validate it. Okay. So once you're done that, you need to publish. If you want to save this, you need to publish to the data factory. Okay. But if you have some Git configuration and all, you can save it. Okay. But you don't have Git configuration, you need to publish it. Okay. I'll publish this. So these are all the ones it will be published. See here, it is so number of used DUs, copy duration $0.25 for DIU per hour. So per 1 hour, one DIU costs $0.25. So data, the cost depends upon the data movement and data integration units. Okay, now it is time. Let me debug this.
What is the Git configuration? Can we do in our local and in
Yes.
our PCs?
Yes, I can do. Git configuration is nothing but you have Git, right? If you're done the programming in the Visual Studio, you will use that versioning, right? For versioning, you have branches and all. You work with SSIS or programming background? Earlier.
No, we are going with TFS.
TFS, right? Yeah, that's fine. So TFS also you create like branches and you check-ins and you manage the versioning, right?
Yes.
This, yeah, same thing. It's a versioning kind of a Git. So it's target. Go over here. I can see the sample. Okay. So here you can see here output. I can say here, if you see here, so this shows the input, this shows the output, this shows the details. Now here input is this one, delimited text storage, Azure blob storage, and what is the file name, it will give the details. Then the output talks about how many connections used, how many data integration units used, 4 units are used, and these are the details. Now it gives the detailed breakup. So what the East US is a storage account source, this is target, data read is 30 bytes, target is data written 30 bytes, one file has been read and one file has been written, and this is a copy duration just 0.003 seconds. Okay, and start time use DIUs, data integration units are used is 4, and if there is anything queue and transfer everything, it shows, and it shows status and what is the integration runtime you used. Now if you see here, the source has this file name, the file known as sample. So in the target you can see the same file known as sample. All right, so this is how we create a pipeline and run that. So this is a copy activity, but in the copy activity there will be so many variations. So what I can do, I can what do you say, I can make this as a dynamic source. Also I can make dynamic, the properties I can make dynamic, sync I can make dynamic, everything I can make dynamic. I can run this. Of course you need to make the dynamic in the real-time environment, you cannot make it as a constants. Okay, but we'll use that, how to use the variables, how to use the parameters, how to make it dynamic, we'll see in the upcoming sessions. All right, so in the real-time environment, usually what happens, so sources, all the sources you will manage in one of the configuration file or in the configuration table. Then you will make it everything as a dynamic, what is the source table, target table, target database, or target path, or source path, everything will make dynamic. Then you will use one by one in and copy the data. We'll see that, we'll use that also. Okay, so in the next session we'll use the copy data, and we'll make a source as variable. Sorry, next session we will try to copy multiple files, how to copy multiple files, and how to use the variables and parameters, that you will use here next session. And it's a wise idea always to delete the data, right? So I'll go here home. So I have a resource group Azure Devo POCs. Okay, so I'll select this, I will delete this. So you just say yes, I'll delete, otherwise the cost will be incurred again. So just deleting. So always what you do, whenever you do that, you do the same thing, you create all the simple resource group and you just delete it.
Is it possible to move the file to some processed folder kind of thing? I mean, we just do a source to destination, right?
Mm-hmm.
Source to target. Let's say once the file is processed, I don't want that file in the source folder. I want to move it to a different folder.
Yes, yes, of course. That's what we do actually.
No.
That all we'll do here. So usually when you process, yeah, you can, if for recording purpose or for archiving purpose, you want to move to the next level. Yes, that you can do. We will see that. So we'll cover those examples also. Any doubts so far?